Welcome to Inside Baseball. Myself and Jon Heyman here every Thursday, 8 p.m. You can download.
I think we might be having some technical difficulties here.
If you're on the Fan Cred app right now. So, or comments, please leave them in the comments section, and we'd be happy to answer anything that we can along the way. Now, we have a lot to talk about. We have some awesome guests this week, but at first we are going to talk about what's going on in the NL West, because it is like a wild, wild West out there. Starting with the Rockies, now a game and a half in front. What is going right for them?
Well, I think they just get overlooked. I overlooked them. I think everybody overlooks them. They're in a pretty small media market. It's not the smallest market, but, they like a lot of other markets, they lost one of their papers, only have one paper. It seems like they're out there in the mountains, and we just never think about them for some reason. I think part of it is the history of not playing well on the road, maybe fading at the end, maybe not pitching that well. But if you look at this team, they really have performed, and they've got probably two MVP candidates right now. Trevor Story joining Nolan Arenado, who's a perennial MVP candidate. They've got Kyle Freeland, who's been overlooked because, of course, you've got DeGrom, you've got Scherzer, and you've got Nola at the top of that Cy Young chase. But Kyle Freeland has been spectacular, particularly at Coors Field, and Colorado native, and you've got to give him credit for figuring it out. So their starting pitching has generally been good, and we know they have good players. We forget about them, but Carlos Gonzalez is a very good player. Obviously had a rough year last year, but he's returning to form. LeMahieu is a very nice player. Parra has been a good player in the past, not having a great year this year, but is a solid player. They have Iannetta. They've got good players, a good lineup, and Arenado's one of the best players in baseball, and right now Story is. That 505-foot home run, I don't know if you caught a glimpse of it, but it was something else. I think we've lost Jenny. Is Jenny there? You there?
Yeah, I'm here, Jon. Sorry about that.
I lost you for a second. Maybe it's my TV or my –
Who knows? Crazy connections. You were just talking about Trevor Story, though, and I mean, obviously the kid is more talented than anyone could have ever. 105-foot homer the other night. So you consider him?
He's got to be considered. It's hard to make an order right now. There's so many that are so close. And, I did a list of 9. I didn't have him in it, and I didn't have Christian Yelich about a week ago. And both of them deserve to be in the running. I don't think there's any question about that. Arenado, I just mentioned. Baez, I think Carpenter from the Cardinals. I think all 3 pitchers really need to be considered. I don't mind voting for pitchers. They've won the MVP in the past. They're part of the race. I'd probably prefer a position player if we can have one, and I think we probably will this year. I think Carpenter, Baez, Freeman, Goldschmidt, Arenado, Story, Yelich. To me, those are the names right now for the first couple spots. But I would, if you're going to include 10, which you have to do, and I do have this vote. This is my vote this year. I think Scherzer, Nola, and DeGrom need to be considered. It's hard. Sometimes it's probably hard to say DeGrom because he doesn't have 10 wins, but, I don't count wins for Cy Young. Cy Young is all about the performance, not about whether you're able to win the games or not. So I don't really count them for Cy Young. And but for MVP, it's easier to kind of vote for a guy who's got a whole bunch of wins because he's really impacting the race if he has the wins. It's not DeGrom's fault that he's not impacting the race, but it's probably tough to say he's at the top of the MVP board.
Now, as far as the schedule goes for the Rockies, I mean, do you think their schedule is favorable
enough to hold on to this lead? Yeah, I think their schedule is pretty good. It's certainly better than Arizona's schedule. Arizona has a whole string of games against winning teams. If you look at it, something like the next 19 games are against winning teams. Colorado has some games in there that I think for them might be easy. They've just killed the Giants this year, and they do have a few more games left against the Giants. Look, the Phillies are a contender, but they have not been a good contender lately, and they have games against them. And at the end of the season, they have the Nats. And as we know, the Nats are probably the biggest underachiever in baseball. They're certainly talented, certainly the Nats at the look very daunting right now. So I think the schedule's pretty good for Colorado, and I think they're really good. I think that we've just overlooked them to this point.
What about the Dodgers? So they appear to be in control of the wild card right now. Do you think they can catch the Rockies?
Yeah, I mean, to me, they won 4 years in a row, that division. So
I mean, it's still so close.
Knocked off, you might say they are the favorite. Even though they're a couple games behind. The wild card, they're right in the middle of the wild card race too. But they're going to have to hustle because obviously that Central is pretty good. I think the Cubs are probably going to hang on there in the Central. But, you look at Milwaukee, you look at St. Louis. Those are pretty tough teams, pretty good teams. And I wouldn't be shocked if all 3 teams made it from the Central, and both wild cards came out of the Central right now.
The Dodgers, they're 12 and 12.
Yeah, I did a
10th.
winners and losers updated after the second deadline, and I had them near the top. And it really hasn't manifested itself on the field in terms of their one-loss record. I love their moves, getting Manny Machado, the best player traded in my mind, who's healthy. I think that was a terrific move. They got Dozier, obviously. They got Freege. They got 3/4 of a great infield. They already had a pretty good infield. So I love the moves that they made. I thought they did well. The one thing they didn't do was get a bullpen help. They relied heavily on Kenley Jansen. And obviously, right now he's got a heart condition that they need to attend to and be serious about. And they are. I mean, he's not going to Colorado with the team. And I think they have to do what's safe and cautious and right for his health. So, they didn't know that going into the first deadline, I don't believe. But in the second deadline, they did. And they just weren't that. There are a lot of relievers out there, but there weren't great answers. They came up with a Exford and a Madsen. Neither guy is in his peak right now. They're near the end of their careers. They can be effective on occasion, but right now the big question with the Dodgers is that bullpen. Is Jansen going to be back? And I'm not putting pressure on him. If his health comes first. And how are the rest of the guys going to do? Because I think that 8th inning, that 7th inning, those are the 2 questions for the Dodgers.
Yeah, and I think just being in Colorado, I think it's a smart move to not have him travel out there with that high altitude. That's nothing you want to deal with. Another pitcher that's kind of come out of nowhere, and you said the Diamondbacks have a rough schedule coming down the stretch, but Clay Buchholz. I mean, where did this Buchholz come from? This is like the Buchholz that we've saw so many years ago with the Red Sox.
I don't think anyone could have expected this from him.
What have you seen from him?
He is good when he's able to be healthy and be on the mound, and he's not old. But at this stage, when I saw he had signed a minor league deal, I'm like, you know what? They're taking a shot in the dark. Every team needs pitching depth. You never know. I didn't think he'd be this good and this consistent, and he really has. And, their pitching has been really good. Greinke has been fabulous. Robbie Ray, very talented. Corbin, free agent. He's serving himself well by performing in his free agent year. Their starting pitching is very good. They added at the deadlines. Their bullpen should be good with Bradley and the rest. The question is, are they going to hit enough? They've struggled lately. And it's a little bit of a surprise because on paper, they look like they have a pretty good hitting team. Obviously, they lost Lamb. That was a blow. They lost Souza for a lot of the year. That hurt. He's back. They got Escobar. He done quite as well there as he did in Minnesota. They have Goldschmidt, Pollock, who got off to a great start before he got hurt. So, I think injuries have piled up and they've hurt their offense, and that's the big question for the Rockies. Are they going to hit enough?
That's the question. Now, you said you came out with an article about reassessing the trade deadlines, how teams did during that time, and if it's paying off or not. So one of the big winners that you have is the Cubs, the Dodgers, and the Yankees. Those are your top
markets.
3.
We got
so explain why.
3 markets. They're not in that order, but that's the way it turned out for me. Yeah, the Cubs have done fabulously. Obviously, Cole Hamels, the best move to date. He wasn't very good at the end of his tenure in Texas. Very few teams were interested. The Cubs needed a pitcher. They had the issue with Darvish at that moment. They needed to get somebody with a pedigree, and they went out and got him, and they rolled the dice, and he's been absolutely fabulous for the Cubs. The best midseason pitching move they made since Rick Sutcliffe, as I wrote on Fancraft. And you know what? I think Murphy is a big plus. I mean, the guy's a great hitter since 2016. He's got the second best batting average after Jose Altuve. That's pretty good. So, I think the Cubs have done fabulously. The Dodgers, as we went over, getting Machado, Dozier, and the rest. I mean, you can't really argue with that. You wonder, maybe the question is, the bullpen, did they get enough in the bullpen? And the Yankees, they did what they needed to do in terms of the rotation. There weren't a lot of great options out there. They thought Hamels giving up all those home runs in Texas. They may see a repeat of that in Yankee Stadium, a real hitter's park, so they shied away there. I can't really blame them. Obviously, Hamels has been the best pickup, but J. Happ has probably been the second best pickup. And for me, he starts game one for them in the playoffs. He starts that wild card game. He has been really good, really consistent for them. And Lance Lynn has been very viable starting pitcher for them as well. They got Voit, who's been fantastic. I mean, seemed like an afterthought. I didn't really understand that trade at the time, but there's a method to the madness of Brian Cashman. That certainly worked out as well. So, I mean, you could quibble and say they should have gotten an outfielder earlier so they weren't playing kind of journeymen out there while they were waiting for Judge to get back. Obviously, the original prognosis that he could be back in 3 weeks, that was wildly off, and I think that probably threw them off. I mean, they believed it. It wasn't a lie. They thought he'd be back in 3 weeks. Well, he's still not back, and it's double that right now. So they went out and got McCutchen. They probably overpaid for McCutchen, but it was a move that was necessary at the time. And they still, since we still don't have Judge back, I mean, you got to have somebody for the playoffs, and McCutchen will be the guy if Judge doesn't come back. I mean, they do think Judge will be back, but well, with Judge, I mean, he started hitting off a tee, and as soon as he did, he said he felt well, and it'd be a week or two. So, we're waiting right now, and the Yankees are waiting, and they're nervous. He's their best everyday player, and to be without him it hurts, and certainly without Gregorius hurt, and Sanchez. And now Sanchez is back, and he's got those same pass ball questions that he had before. He and Severino teamed up to have 2 wild pitches, 2 pass balls in 1 inning against Oakland. So there are right now a lot of questions with the Yankees. They're going to get a wild card spot. They'll probably get the home field. People will think they'll win, but you know what? Everyone's counted Oakland out before. I think Oakland is kind of like Colorado, and nobody kind of believed it, and it's time to believe because we're about 7/8 the way through the season right now.
Making their way up. Do you think the Yankees have what it takes if all those guys do remain on the DL and injured? Do they have what it takes? I don't think so, but
you know what? They overperformed last year. They came within 1 game of the World Series. So, I mean, it is a little bit of a crapshoot. You never know. You look at Houston's team. To me, that looks better on paper. They only beat the Yankees there in Game 7 of the LCS last year. Went out to win the World Series, obviously. But looking at their rotation, I mean, it's absolutely stacked. The Yankees, we don't even know who's going to start Game 1 for the Yankees. They can't come out and tell you who's their Game 1 starter or who's their wild card starter in this case, and that's a bad sign. I think it's going to be rough for the Yankees to get through it. Obviously, their future looks good. They have incredible prospects. They got a great lineup, good bullpen, but right now a lot of questions, and I would favor them probably 3rd or 4th in the American League right now at best.
Question I have for you, just on your reassessing the trade deadlines, you have the Braves at number 4, but you have as one of the big winners, the Orioles. I think that a lot of people that might not dig deep into whether it's potential stars.
Yeah, well, they needed to get on with the trade.
Why do you have the Orioles quickly, as number 5?
And they thought they did a good job for Machado. They got Yusniel Diaz, who I think is a fantastic prospect. They got 4 other potentials in that deal. So I thought they did really well there. With Britton, they did a nice trade with the Yankees. They got a guy who throws 98, who was a number 4 overall pick in the draft a few years back, and for Texas. And he's already been traded twice, but very good young, hard-throwing right-hander. And, I thought they did well. Now, in terms of the Gausman trade, Gausman being reunited with Dave Wallace and Dom Chidi, who were in Baltimore, that has really helped them. And I think that's why I have Atlanta on the list 4th. I think Gausman has been a big, big plus. And he was kind of overlooked at the deadline. People were all focused on Archer, and Gausman has turned out to be the key guy, at least of that day, of that late day session, July 31st. The Orioles, they saved themselves $60 million. They built up their international draft by $8 million. and they got 15 players. Now, did they get great prospects for Gosman? Not really, but you know what? They were able to trade O'Day in that deal. I think they saved $12 million on that, something like that. And, sometimes these trades are about building up resources to improve in the future, and they're a team for the future, not a team for now.
To finish off your big winners list, you have the Rays, the Athletics, the Twins, and the Giants.
Yeah, I love what the Rays did. They're doing unbelievably on the field, and you have to give them immense credit for that. I never thought they would. They made sales galore in spring. Then they lost 2 or 3 pitchers to Tommy John surgeries. They said they'd be okay. They were right about that. In terms of the trade deadline, I think they did a fabulous job. I thought the Archer trade was really good. Shane Baz adding to that with Glasnow and Meadows gave him 3 really good prospects. The Archer contract is excellent, so his value was high, and they took advantage of it. And I thought they traded him at exactly the right time to do that. So they did a great job. They got Tommy Pham kind of as a throwaway. I thought that was pretty good. They got Beeks from Boston. They did a lot of good things. I mean, they could easily be number 1 on this list because they did a lot of great things. But since they're not a contender, for me, I kind of focus more on the contenders than the other teams. But they are good. They're a good team. They're 10 or 11 games over. I shouldn't disregard them. But they're just not a contender in that league right now. American League, very tough.
We are going to get more on your reassessment of the trade deadline, but we have our first guest that will be joining us on the FanCred fan line. So we'd like to welcome in Brian McNamee. So Roger Clemens, former trainer. A lot of people know him for how he testified against Clemens on the grand jury. So thank you so much for joining us. We are honored to have you here. Now, typically when you think about baseball, you don't think about grand juries and testifying and all of that. What was that whole experience like for you? Because I know that
it was definitely pretty interesting. Hey, Jen, how are you? Hey, John, good to see you.
Back.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of time, a lot of years, a lot of time. Definitely wore me down. Just going through the whole process of the way our government works, the way they have to get to the bottom of things, as they would say, or try. And I walked away, I had some battle scars, but, you look at, they felt they needed to do it because of baseball and because of what baseball means to this country. And, I have a lot of things I could possibly say still in regards to how the process went down and so on.
We'll get to the battle scars and the process later, but first I want to ask you what you're up to now. What do you do? Where do you live? How are things going?
I'm still in Long Beach, John. You know that town. Still
Beautiful.
Doing the same stuff, just getting a little more interested in other stuff. I just finished up a screenplay with this really talented writer. I think you got a chance to read that. It's
very
called,
good. Really interesting. I hope you sell it because it's a good one.
Thank you. Nick Colosi, who was great way we met. And I got into that after I'd written my book that still hasn't been published. But I'm still dealing with American Nutrition Center in Boston and Everett, and also Steve Cardillo. I know you know that name, John, with his weight belts and company and stuff. And we support each other. He's definitely supported me throughout all the good times and bad, and still today. So a lot of loyalty there that goes back and forth. But I really thank him and his nephew Peter for all their support, and the Boston crew. And I'm looking to get into more performance enhancement testing, as far as I got involved with this lab that's out in Staten Island. I'm going to be going there more and more. I met one of their business analysts, as far as brought me in there to check out how what they do is they do this whole testing, performance testing, and they go based on certain tests that will tell the body what's ready to be injured, what's not, how to correct that so it doesn't get hurt. And I like the science aspect too. It's not, I never really was just into the nuts and bolts as far as weights and running. I like the scientific stuff about it too, all the research. So that's keeping me busy.
Where do you think the future of sports performance is? What's next?
Well, in regards to the training aspect, that's always going to change. There's always going to be the latest and greatest, and a lot of times it goes back to, you can't reinvent the wheel. You can make it better, but you can't reinvent it. And you can't reinvent hard work and intelligence and the ability to understand and listen to direction. So you work with the type of players. I mean, I could see 3 guys walking down the street at 15 years old, and I can pinpoint exactly what they'll be capable of doing, pretty close to it, just by, you know, at that age. You know, there's a lot of science involved in it, and it's going to get better. And that's why you're going to see some stuff like you're going to see people, put it this way, the best part about performance enhancement is not the performance enhancement. It's the ability to, when you do get hurt, to recover, and the ability to recover quicker. So we can't guarantee you're never going to get hurt. If you guys are doing my program and you can step off the curb in Manhattan and twist your ankle, blow out your knee. The thing is, with the conditioning, it keeps you in a state of recovery all the time if you're working correctly, so that when these happen, you can recover quickly. You're on the field quicker, back to play. That you'll see probably the biggest one. I don't even know if they keep a stat on that, but they should.
Mac, I don't doubt that you can pinpoint whether a guy can be a player by 15. You could have done it with me when I was 7, I think. So, you know, doesn't surprise me you could do it by 15. But back to you for a second. Let's talk a little. You mentioned the battle scars and the prospect and the process. Looking back on it, you know, obviously there was a settlement that you're not allowed to disclose what the settlement was. So that implicit in that is that it's some kind of admission by Clemens that he did something wrong. We know that he was found not guilty of the perjury and making the false statements. To me, that was a little unusual because obviously it was in the Mitchell report that he did it. He didn't sue Mitchell. The evidence seemed plain to me. But what do you look back on that process and the battle scars, and what do you take away from it? Do you have regrets about the process? Is there something wrong with the process? Where do you think it went wrong in a sense? I mean, you did get the settlement, so ultimately there was some retribution, but you know, I'm not sure you thought it was completely fair in the end.
That sums up a great bunch of questions, which is probably what a lot of people want to ask me, but I don't have the time, or I don't know. But that's what probably is in a lot of your listeners' minds about that situation. The battle scars were basically what that era, that steroid era, and my experience and my involvement had it done to so many people with the government. What the government had done. The government took charge of a private entity. Clemens was guilty. He was guilty before I even took the stand of 3 charges. So I don't even know why we did that whole dog and pony show there. I didn't know why we did the Congress thing when I never got an opportunity not to testify. I had no choice. They didn't give me any choices. So he had a choice not to do it because, of course, they had enough information in their depositions that they were going to find them guilty and press charge or seek a grand jury on it. That was obvious. The whole 5 hours up there, you know, was nonsense. And, you know, I don't even know how to it's like it was the fastest 5 hours I ever spent, you know, because it was, once it started, it was over. And I'm like, did that just really happen? You know, because I didn't learn a thing. I don't think anything was valid. Mm-hmm. You know,
yeah. What do you think?
Anything was valid?
Was his celebrity? Did his celebrity get him off, or what exactly was it that swayed the jury?
I don't know if it was just a disinterest or a strategy by Hardon that he's just going to wear him down to fall asleep all day, and then, you know, whittle it down to just 12 jurors left, and then they were probably just so upset that they had to sit there for 6 hours listening to this garbage, and they just said, we don't even want to do this. What are we doing here? Probably, but that's something you probably won't even hear. Other than that, I wouldn't know. I don't know what goes through their minds.
You were talking about Rusty Hardin, the lawyer. Is that who you were referring to? Okay.
As far as maybe that's a tactic of his, I don't know.
Okay.
To make the jury go to sleep or something, I don't know.
Well, we all have our strategies, I guess.
Hey, whatever works, you know.
Yeah. What happened exactly? I mean, I think we know some of the background or a lot of it, but why did you feel compelled to testify to the Mitchell committee? I mean, without you, that Mitchell report would have been okay, but with you, it was fairly sensational. What made you decide to do that?
Deciding to do it was not really I didn't think that I had a choice. I was led to believe I didn't have one due to my involvement at that time and at my stage in my career and my family life. I didn't think I had one. And it was also, it wasn't pumped up to the point where they said, oh, all right, you're going to tell us everything you know. Then we're going to go in front of Congress. Then you're going to go this and that. You're going to get sued 2-3 times. You're going to do. They didn't put it that way. They said, they led me to believe that they weren't naming names and that they weren't going to name names. It was just a fact-finding mission. That's it. And I was led to believe that all the way up to the day of the Mitchell report being released. And there are some theories why that was the way it changed by releasing the players' names is due to the fact that the Players Association had emailed all the players and administration and telling them not to get involved in a witch hunt. And Mitchell, I think that's what got Mitchell all jazzed up and said, all right, this is what's going to happen now. That's been told to me several times. So maybe that's true. It sounds like it could be, but I don't know. I really don't.
Did you think the Mitchell report was pretty accurate? Did he do a good job with what he knew?
Well, I think no, I don't. I know it was accurate with mine and Kirk Radomski stuff, but I know that it was factual. Put it that way. Accurate, no. Meaning accurate. Was it fair to do that? Was it fair to write a book like that, or whatever, a book, a monologue, whatever it's called? Was it fair to do that? I don't think it was. Was it fair for Mitchell to be able to use governmental powers and taxpayer monies to help him get paid for basically corporate private business work? I don't think it was. And Mitchell had lied several times in the after effect, and I know that for a fact. So he gets to just fly it off into the sunset with his money and his rep, But he a year after they did an article in the effects of Mitchell after, I think the Daily News had done that, and Mitchell had said, because people had said that he was told that agents knew about it, that players, coaches knew about it, and he said if I was told that, it would have been in the Mitchell report. I know for a fact I told Mitchell that there are agents involved. I told him their names. And I know Kirk did also because we had spoken about it. So how is that okay? How is that okay?
Yeah. You don't think it's fair? Did you think also that some players were singled out, and how prevalent do you think it was in terms of the usage at that time? And how about now? Do you know now, or would that be asking an unfair question?
John, I'm gonna have to repeat that. I'm hearing.
Yeah. I
talking over you.
I feel like he kind of picked and chose a little bit on who he put in the report and who he didn't put in the report. There were 70 names or something like that in the report. How many?
Yes.
How prevalent was the steroid use, do you think, at that time? I would ask you about now, but I think that's probably unfair. I don't think, since you're not involved. I mean, you were in the clubhouses, you were around. Obviously we know your role. You were a trainer. You've heard estimates that 50% were using steroids. Some people said 80. I don't believe that. I don't know. How many do you think were using at that time? And you do think it was cleaned up a bit, don't you?
I believe it got, as you said, a little bit for a little bit of time too. So I'll add that to your statement. It got cleaned up for a little bit, and for a little bit of time it got cleaned up, because that's correct. I still have my finger on the pulse of professional sports. I am in all, as we would call, our locker rooms of discussion, and I take part in it. I'm actually now a senior statesman in that concern. But they just basically idled the car for a couple of days, and then they started it up again to race. They just wanted to show solidify you guys, the media, solidify the fans, which the fans, could go either way. Probably they would prefer bigger drugs and a bigger athlete. Everybody does. And the owners also, and Sealy too, he skated, but they want bigger, better players. And now that they had to go through this overhaul, it's as bad as it was. Like you call it, John, you keep calling it a steroid era. It was just a moment in time. It's still performance enhancing drugs in baseball, and they're not going to be these cartoon figures anymore, but they're going to be better. They're going to be making the money, and they are using it. It's just as bad. If you give me $1 million to catch you cheating, someone's going to give me 10 million so you could pass. And that's just the way. That's the name of the game. Look at Russia. Look at the Olympics. It's never going to stop. It's never going to stop. And as soon as you come up with a new drug or a new test, they're going to have a new drug or a new way to beat it. It's just right now they're just smarter at it. They're smarter at doing it.
Yeah, I think Jenny will be back in a second. But a couple of things fascinated me about the whole Clemens case. One thing was that he was denying that you gave him HGH and steroids, but meanwhile it was admitted that you gave his wife. I guess she had a picture shoot that you gave his wife HGH. It seems on its face ridiculous that here's this big time baseball player who ended up with 7 Cy Youngs, pitching fantastically into his 40s, and he admits his wife got HGH from you, but not him. That was one thing. The other thing that was interesting, I thought, was that you saved his DNA, and I would have think that would be kind of a smoking gun, and it didn't turn out to be. And why did you decide to save his DNA? You guys had a very close relationship, but you knew him pretty well. Did you feel like he wasn't really trustworthy? Is that why you did that?
I guess I did know him really well, very well, John. And that's another popular question. The DNA was saved primarily not to use against him. It was to get my ex-wife off of me, because there just certain things had gone down in our relationship, my business relationship, and she would take in some other times where I might have gotten in trouble for sticking up for other people, been the fall guy for certain things, being a police officer and stuff. That stuff was done, and I really just did it because I just wanted her off my back, and I wanted her to leave me alone. Because it was, his listening to that every single day when I'm home, if I'm not traveling, just to hear it. So that's why I did it. I never thought I'd ever be the
fall guy. She was afraid you'd be the fall guy again, I guess, right?
That was part of her many complaints of, what's going on with what I do for a living, but she knew every second of every day of what I've done and what I've did it to and everything. So, but that's, besides that, I'll keep it at that. That's why I kept it. And I almost thrown it out several times when my basement would get flooded, and she would put it back. She'd, no, hold on to it. I said, all right. Because I had no use for it. It was in a closet, had all my books in it, all my School Plus stuff, all of that stuff. And I just said, throw it out. She said, no, I'm not throwing it out. Because I'd be the one staying home, cleaning up the basement. And I would have to, basically pump the basement, drain it, and clean it because it was a place for the kids. So that's how that happened. And there's really no other mindset behind it. Call me a rat for doing it, whatever.
Yeah, I think you're vulnerable to flood. You know what I want to ask you? What do you think about, and I don't know what you're going to say about this, at least publicly, what do you think about the Hall of Fame? What do you think about Roger Clemens in the Hall of Fame? Obviously, the 7 Cy Youngs. Right now, the vote is fairly split. I think it's something like 55-45 that he in favor of him. You need 75, so he's still got a long way to go. And they cut down the number of years that you can go to get in the Hall of Fame. What do you think generally about steroids in the Hall of Fame and Roger Clemens in the Hall of Fame?
You look at it like Joe Morgan. Didn't he give a speech last year in December in regards to he doesn't. I don't know if he's a liaison for the Hall of Fame, or does he work for the Hall of Fame? I'm not sure.
Yeah, he wrote a letter urging the voters not to vote for the steroid guys.
Because he just said it prior to, I think, them getting the votes in or something about they don't want him here. We don't want him here. So that was a pretty powerful statement, I thought. And so I look at it from the player standpoint, the fan standpoint, and then America's standpoint. And then, there's always arguments about, well, they got rapists, criminals, drug addicts already in the Hall of Fame. I don't know. And there's a lot more worse. Ty Cobb was this and that. All right, fine. And then, all right, fine. Put a steroid wing in. They talked about that. That's fine. But if it stays the same, I don't think it would be right. because there were people that got in that were suspect but weren't caught or really that badly accused. But all right, so, and you take like Clemens, who never failed the test, so we know, but the evidence against him is pretty bad. So then, all right, those are the three topics how I look at it. Then I look at it as well, because I can look at it this way: he is guilty. He bought, acquired, and took steroids for an advantage in athletics. That's a fact. Unfortunately, unproven in a court of law. But the thing is, it's what he did. It's what he did to the children of the game that are now 16, 20, 25, that are big fans. They're the ones going to the park spending money. The fans like me, right, we're not going to the park spending money. So what are you telling those kids? And what lesson are you sending them? Because unfortunately, baseball is a huge its own government in itself in America. So that's how I look at it also. It might be different from what people think or how they think, but that's how I think. And if he got in, like, I don't even know what he says, but I don't know. He gets in. And I spoke to one of the VPs of public relations when I went and played. When I went down to Doubleday Field when I was in Cooperstown. When I played, I spoke to them and they had a great conversation. He goes, the VP, he goes, you know what? We don't even have a stance on it. He goes, we really don't mess with that. That's baseball. And the right is, we just put this stuff up.
Yeah.
That's what he told me. And I thought that was a different take than I ever thought of. The
Yeah.
whole thing really isn't that involved in it.
If you had a vote, yes or no, you vote for him?
Oh man, I can't answer that question only because of it's too close to me. If I was a writer, knowing everything I just said, and had just a writer that had a vote, I don't know. You know, because I probably wouldn't know the facts if I was you. You know, you wouldn't. You know, you know pretty much what you read about what I said and what I think, but you know, you don't know. All right. So I really don't know. That's a good question, but I can't confidently answer it.
All right.
Brian, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time here on Fan Creds Fan Line, and we'll have to have you back on.
Yeah, no doubt.
At some point.
All right,
Thanks,
Jon, take care. Great hearing, great being on. Thanks for everything. You guys take care.
See you later, Mac.
He was very open.
I think so. I got the feeling he probably not giving Clemens the vote, but he didn't want to say that. But yeah, I mean, he said he's guilty.
Yeah.
He doesn't deny his part in it, and you know, he's dealing with it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine the position that he was put in, and you become close personal friends with these guys, and to be in a spot where you need to testify against a close personal friend, I can't even imagine.
It's a tough one. I mean, you know, the Bonds got handled differently. His trainer didn't say anything and went to jail. But McNamee had 3 kids and a wife, and you know, I don't think too many people would have taken a different road than he took. You know, you put in that position. Once you did make the mistake, and he admits it was a mistake of injecting him with the steroids, and they come to you and suggest that you're in trouble if you don't help out, I think 90% or more people would do the testifying.
We have a question from one of our comments, and it comes from Amit, who's asking about if you know anything about the Rod Allen, Mario Impemba altercation in Detroit. What did you hear about that?
Yeah, I have heard, and I think it's been reported somewhere, but I've heard. I generally don't report on other media members, but yes, I heard they had an altercation. It was apparently over a chair, and I don't know whether it was one of the chairs was more comfortable or had a better view. I didn't get all the details on it because I wasn't really planning to write a story on it. But since you asked, I heard it was over a chair, and the accusation is that Rod Allen was the aggressor and started the fight. I haven't had a chance to talk to Rod Allen. I don't know. He's a lovely man. I've known him for years. Good announcer. It's been a long season in Detroit. I know that. And it does seem like it's come out there. And I know The Athletic has written on it that these two guys, while they worked together great for, I think, 16 years, they just aren't really seeing eye to eye in terms of being friends. So I hope they work it out for their sake because they're nice guys. But it seemed a little bit over the top to get in an altercation over a chair in the press box. It's nice they want to have a good view, but you got to work with your colleagues. And I'm glad that's never going to happen for us. First of all, we're not in the same room, so we don't have that problem, but I can't envision that happening anyway.
You were involved in a little bit of drama just recently with Josh Donaldson and his agent releasing a statement saying that the reports that you put out there, he was refuting them. What's going on,
Yeah,
John?
well, Josh Donaldson is a great player and going into his free agent year. And I've heard word, and I'm very confident that it's accurate, and this was a very small part of a story about why his trade value went down. And the bigger part of that story was that he didn't want to be traded. He wanted to stay in Toronto, and word got out that he wanted to stay in Toronto rather than go to a contender. And he didn't deny that part of the story. So that, obviously is true. The other part is true as well. The Blue Jays wanted to keep Josh Donaldson. He had been terrific for them, won the MVP his first year, got MVP votes in the next 2 years. And going into this year, they had conversations with him in which dollars were discussed, years were discussed. I think the agent somehow doesn't want that out. I didn't look at that as such a negative thing that he had turned that down. Now we understand he's not going to get that same kind of money, that 3 years and more than $75 million now after a year in which he's injured. So someone could, I guess another agent or somebody else could say, what, they should have taken it or whatever. But, considering where Donaldson stood in the game, I'm not shocked that he didn't take a deal that was something along the lines. I think it was a little bit over the Arrieta deal. And it's a logical offer of 3 years and around 80 million or 85 million. I don't know the exact figure, but a little bit over that, the Arrieta deal. It's a logical figure. I don't blame him for not taking it going into the year. I mean, he didn't have these injury problems, certainly not to this extent. And he bet on himself. He gambled on himself. And it was 1 or 2, 3 sentences somewhere down in the story about how his trade value disintegrated and how his free agent value is not going to be quite the same too. It was this mention of this offer and the money is being discussed. And apparently the agent doesn't want it out there that they turned down an offer that now in hindsight, and anybody could say in hindsight, they should have taken. So I didn't look at it as some kind of knock on Donaldson or the agent at the time. It was a small part of the story, and it remains an accurate part of the story.
Standing by what you said.
Absolutely factual. They had discussions about the contract. They made a suggestion or certainly an offer in that vicinity of 3 years, and they were flexible. They were willing to talk about 4 years if it came to that, but I don't think they would have gone way beyond that in terms of the money. We're talking about a player who's well past 30 years old, and teams are kind of shying away from that in terms of the long-term deals. So I guess he thinks if it's out there, other agents are going to use it against him. You know what? Every agent has had situations like this. I don't think there's really a lot to regret. In a way, you would say, should he have taken it, knowing what we know now? Okay, maybe. But at that time, I think most people would have turned it down, probably. I mean, it was a legitimate effort by the Jays. I don't fault them. I think they tried. They wanted to keep him, and unfortunately, it didn't work out. But right now, I think they're in a tougher bind. So they react how they reacted.
We have Andrew from Boston on the fan line right now. He's going to join us. He has a question about Ohtani. So, Andrew, welcome to FanCred.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? I wanted to get just your quick thoughts. So, I'm a huge fan of Shohei Ohtani. I think that he's had a revolutionary rookie season, much in the ilk of his fellow countryman Ichiro. And but I feel like he's kind of sacrificing his future success because of this Tommy John business. And I know, John, you're very high on Ohtani. And I wanted to get your thoughts on whether or not you think that him playing the rest of the season will be worth his career in general.
Okay, well, good question. We've seen you before. You're good. You're full of good questions. We appreciate that. So keep it up. I'm not a doctor, so I don't know. The first day after the diagnosis that he needed to get Tommy John surgery, he went out and went 4 for 4 and hit 2 home runs. So apparently it doesn't affect his hitting. He's able to hit fabulously still. So by appearances, and again, I'm not a doctor, it appears that he can keep on being a hitter, and he's going to be a great hitter, obviously. Oh, yeah. He is a great hitter already, and he's an incredible pitching talent. We've never seen a talent like this come along. It is kind of like Babe Ruth. Obviously, Babe Ruth didn't have Tommy John surgery. Babe Ruth was a fabulous pitcher for the Boston Red Sox. Then he became the best home run hitter of all time, had the home run record for decades, and just an amazing, amazing story. But to me, Ohtani is something we have not seen since then. And you know what? This guy can run, too. I mean, the guy is a fabulous runner. I don't know that we've seen a talent like this on the baseball field, in decades. It's really, really fabulous. And I know I said that I think he should be Rookie of the Year. I know I'm in the vast minority. I'm taking a lot of guff for that. I expected that. I know the Yankee fans love Andujar. I get it. The guy's been a great contributor to a team that's going to be in the playoffs. He's had a great offensive season, but to me, Ohtani showed what a fabulous pitcher he is, and he's also showed what a fabulous hitter he is. His OPS is something like 950.
Wow.
Amazing for a part-time hitter who just got to this country within the last year. Just an incredible athlete and an incredible story.
Absolutely.
Do we have Jenny? Are you there, Jenny? Well, I don't see Jenny right now, but I know we were going to talk about the Blue Jays and some of the other things going on with the Blue Jays, and I think they're going to have a terrific future. They have great prospects. We know about Vladimir Guerrero. I think we're going to see him sometime early next year. They have Bo Bichette, the son of Dante Bichette, the sons of a lot of great players, Greg Biggio's son, and they have a fantastic future. But the first order of business will be at the end of the year. And as I wrote on FanCred today, John Gibbons, their longtime manager, I think he's managed more than a decade in 2 different stints for the Blue Jays. And I think he's a fabulous in-game manager, but John Gibbons and the Blue Jays are going to part ways at the end of the year. So that's going to be one managerial change. Last year we had many. Was it 8? I'm not sure. It was a lot of managerial changes. And this year I think we'll have probably 2 or 3. I know on FanCred I had a list of 14 possibilities. It's not going to be anything like 14, but just wanted to go over all the different possibilities and where things stood. Obviously, Jim Riggleman's an interim, so Cincinnati, I think, is going to look around a little bit. And I do think that they like Riggleman very much, so I think he has a very good chance to stay. So I don't think he's going to be one of the 2 or 3 others that may go. I think he actually will stay. So it'll be interesting to see, as it always is at the end of the year, who stays, who goes. We're not going to have the number of firings that we had last year, but I don't think that Gibbons will be the only one to change. So it looks like we have a question now coming in here. Let's see here. Tommy in L.A. on the fan line with a question about the Sox bullpen. All right. Well, you know what? The Sox were one of my winners on the trade deadline. I had a lot of winners. I only had really one loser, which was Houston, which I didn't get the Osuna trade. I think they're fantastic. They're upsetting the apple cart by bringing in this fellow with a criminal case pending. Not necessary. They already have the best starting pitching. Boston, I think, did well overall at the deadline. Kinsler has certainly solidified second base. I think that was good. Eovaldi gave them a little more depth. He hasn't been as consistent as you like. But the one oversight, it looks to me, is the relief pitching. I will say this about Boston. They do not have the system that they usually have. So they were handicapped in terms of making a lot of trades. The other thing was there's only about 3 or 4 really impact relievers. I know there were more than 10 relievers traded, many more than 10 relievers traded, but there were only a handful of impact guys. One of them was Brad Hand. obviously San Diego wasn't letting him go without a big prospect, and they got that in Francisco Mejia. And I don't know if you saw, he hit 2 home runs already in his first game today. So they weren't getting Brad Hand. Boston had talked about him earlier. It just was not happening for Boston on that one. Zach Britton, the Yankees have a great system, and they just had more to give up than Boston did. I think Boston, for a rare time, was at a handicap in terms of the prospects they were able to give up, and that's why they were able to fulfill that bullpen issue that they do have. They do have Kimbrel. I know he's had a couple of hickeys there at the end, but I think he's one of the best 2 or 3 closers in the game. I'd be happy with him. The team is fabulous. To me, they are the clear favorite. Even though their bullpen may have some questions, you've got number 1, you've got number 2 in the MVP, you've got the Cy Young winner, at least in my mind. You've got one of the 3 best closers in the game. Probably going to set a record with 105 wins. The franchise record is 105, and I think they're going to fly past that. And I know Alex Cora doesn't care about that, but it's still the mark of a pretty good season if you set a franchise record for wins. But to me, they're the postseason favorite, despite the fact that their bullpen has some questions.
Do you think the bullpen questions will kind of sort themselves out? I mean, they've got good pitchers on the bullpen. Joe Kelly has shown he can be good. Kimbrel, obviously, most of the time is great. All those guys there can be good. So do you think it's something that will just sort itself out, it'll be fine, or will it continue to be a problem? And in that case, do you fault Dombrowski for not wanting to give up a prospect or a young guy like Devers to get a Brad Hand?
Yeah, I don't fault him for not giving up Devers. I think that's a tough one to give up a guy who's already proven to a large extent at the major league level for a relief pitcher, even if he had 3 years to go. So I wouldn't have done that. He's been a guy who's gambled, giving up prospects and young players in the past. Obviously, the Sale trade, the Kimball trade, they gave up prospects. I think more often than not has worked out for him. It hasn't always worked out. The trade with Milwaukee, where he gave up Shaw, did not work out to this point. We will see. You're right. They have talent in that pen. I think they're a lot like a lot of teams. They got a lot of talent in that pen, but they got a lot of questions in that pen. But I think they have enough to overcome it where you say, to me, they're the American League favorite and the clear one. The biggest question, though, is Chris Sale going to be Chris Sale? And, he had some time off, but he's never had arm problems before. And his season is fabulous. To me, he's a Cy Young winner, but he needs to be really good in the playoffs. To me, that's probably the bigger question, even beyond the bullpen. But look at the team in total. The offense is fantastic. They've all gotten better. I don't know whether it's J.D. Martinez's presence or what, but Betts is fabulous. To me, probably the MVP. Martinez probably second. Bogart's excellent. Devers good. Kinsler good. Moreland good. This is a great team, and this is how you win 105 or more games, by being a great team, and they are that.
Yeah, certainly one of the best Red Sox teams I've ever seen.
No question about it.
All right, well, thank you.
Thanks a lot. All right. Is Jenny there? Well, I don't know if she's there. And you know what? It is 8:53, so we put in 53 minutes. We had an interesting session with Brian McNamee, who hadn't been heard from in a while. It was good to see him again, and he hasn't changed. And thank you for all the questions. It's great to be here on Inside Baseball, on FanCred. And thank you to Jenny Dell. I appreciate all of her efforts. She's the best. And we will see you next week. Thanks, guys.